Welcome to episode 29 of Starbase Flyover Update. Climb on board and we'll cover the last week's developments of Starbase from the 13th of January through to this week's flyover on the 28th. We'll see continued methane GSE work at Massey's, more ship shuffling at Sanchez, a new megabay door at the build site, and additional GSE pipe work at the launch site. My name is Jeff A, so let's buckle up and enjoy the flight. Massey's structural test site has been one of the busiest areas of recent times, so let's have a look around. Special shout out once again to Brocky for creating these labelled maps for all 4 sites at Starbase. Here's what Massey's looked like in our previous flyover on January 13th. Watch as we slowly uncover the changes visible in this week's flyover on the 28th. Let's start at the top right hand corner of the site where we can see progress at the speculated flame trench for a static fire stand. The slurry wall is progressing well, making its way towards the back of the site. Moving beside the rebar staging area, we can see a new set of 12 foundations have appeared since the last flyover. It's not currently known what these are for. We'll keep an eye on this location for future flyovers. Shifting focus to the new methane tank farm area, we can see that the subcoolers have been plumbed into the pumps and progress has been made to connect the methane tanks into the newly installed pipework. Additionally, there's concrete expansion and 4 new vaporizers installed. More plumbing can be seen in the vaults under the access road with no changes spotted at the lock subcoolers. Moving over to the tank farm area of the site, we can see a large amount of concrete has been poured and the new tank foundations have been completed. Taking a quick look beside the boosted quick disconnect, we can see a new black tank has arrived at the site. This tank was originally at the suborbital tank farm at the launch site, but it was removed and transported via SPMT to this site. Panning to the right slightly, we can see a new structure is being fabricated. It is not yet currently obvious what this structure's intended purpose is. It is another thing to keep an eye on in upcoming flyovers. Moving to the test article portion, the can crusher cap has been stripped off the white walkway and other mounting frames. Nearby, we can see large excavation work for a pile cap has commenced after drilling work concluded in this area. And with that, on to Sanchez. Here's a labelled map of the site for those unfamiliar with this layout. Now that you're familiar with Sanchez, let's compare this photo from the flyover on the 13th of January with the aerial shot captured in this week's flyover on the 28th. As you might expect, SpaceX is at full speed, starting over by looking at the tower section pads where preparations are well underway ahead of the construction of the last launch tower segments from Roberts Road, Florida. It looks like 7 out of 9 pads have been built, most likely because SpaceX doesn't expect to have all 9 tower segments staged at the same time. Speaking about tower segments, here you can see parts staged ahead of construction of Segment 8A. Segment 8, the one transported from the Cape, is still at the Port of Brownsville waiting for its transport to Starbase. If you look around, the drainage installation work appears to be almost complete, with some trenches already filled with concrete. Moving down, we have the second fully automated booster transport stand. It doesn't appear to be finished just yet, but progress is still being made. To the right we have a ship installation stand that is almost complete with the clamps already installed, together with its platform to the right that has been practically finished since the last flyover. Between the two is yet another mystery item. Looking at the scrapyard, 2 new articles have been added to the list for scrapping. The B11 hot stage load head and the hot staging ring, both used to test out the strength and resistance of the hot staging ring months ago. We have also noted that a couple of sections spotted in the last flyover have disappeared, most likely into the nearby skips. Close by, this new containment structure has appeared and has been painted black, with pieces to make circular bases inside. The best guess heard in the RGV Patreon show and tell was a possible pair of liquefied natural gas tanks, which could explain the containment wall surrounding it. Once again, we'll have to keep an eye on this development in the coming weeks. Please consider joining the RGV Patreon to access a Discord server so you too could join in discussions like this about all the new developments at Starbase. As we get closer to the rocket garden, let's take a look at the water tank, where the new pad for a second tank has been poured with concrete. It looks like this new tank will be practically the same as the current one by looking at the dimensions. Now to the rocket garden, where you can see some important changes and shuffles. In particular, Ship 26 was removed from the engine installation stand and replaced by Ship 28. Engine shielding pieces and RVAC engine stands are strewn around the garden, though it is unclear if these are from Ship 26 or 28. We speculate that some work is still needed on S-28's engine section before moving to the launch site ahead of the wet dress rehearsal and subsequent launch. New parking has been added along Highway 4, possibly in preparation for the new $21 million 6th-floor parking garage, which will be located along Remedios Avenue, most likely here in this parking lot right behind the Stargate building. Now let's take a look at the progress over at the build site. Now entering the build site, where the big ticket item of this week is Star Factory's unrelenting expansion. Here's Procky's map of the various bays and factories as we make our way around this site. For those of you who missed the good news this past week, local officials have incorporated Starbase, Texas as an official town, only pending approval by the federal government. Let's quickly look at the comparisons from the last flyover on the 13th to this week. Starting out with this top-down shot, let's look closer into Mega Bay 2, where we notice the 6 legs for the ship engine installation stand have been raised and are awaiting the prefabricated ring. Shifting upwards, we see that the glass panels have been installed around the entirety of Mega Bay 2, notably at a much faster pace compared to Mega Bay 1, where SpaceX presumably waited to gather sound and vibration data from IFT-1 to begin glass installation. There are still some scissor lifts remaining inside the top floor of the bay, and these will be lifted away through this hole in the roof by the yellow crane to the left. Looking from a different angle, almost all of the roof panels have been put in place. And this ground photo taken the day before on the 27th shows that the siding above the windows has a ways to go still. Also in this photo, we can make out Ship 29 hiding in the front left of the bay atop the engine installation stand with the second version 2 ship lifting rig attached. Moving on to this brightened photo of Mega Bay 1, we see Booster 12 dead centre atop an engine installation stand connected to pressurization lines. Unseen on the right is Booster 11. On the left-hand side sits Booster 10 as it undergoes final preparations before its rollout and launch as the booster of Starship Flight 3. Not seen here are the 2 halves of Booster 13 on either sides of the front of Mega Bay 1. Lab Padre's Sentinel cam captured Booster 10 being crowned with the hot stage ring on the 26th of January. The next day on the 27th, Mega Bay 1's roll-down door was tested for the first time. The roll-down nature of this door allows the door to be down most of the time, only rolling up slightly for individual sections to be moved into the bay. Our days of viewing booster stacking activities inside the Mega Bays seem to be numbered. Given that there are 3 more door sections staged on the ground, each doorway in Mega Bays 1 and 2 may end up having 2 of these sections each to reach from the top to the ground. Although our views will be impaired, the doors will end up being a wise decision. Seen here is S28 on the 27th, looking quite dusty before it's moved to the ring yard on the 28th. Other than dust, having a door in various bays will allow SpaceX to better standardise the quality of welds in the ship and booster, which vary based on temperature. Interestingly, in this photo we can see where the new lifting rig has damaged some tiles. I guess there is still some refinement needed for this new ship lifting system. Now taking back to the air, here's a top-down view of the Star Factory from the back of the build site. More grey steel columns are being raised to the left to connect the section finished late last year to this new section, as well as to the right, where 2 more concrete embeds have been extended past where we currently thought they would stop to align with the original Star Factory's outline. Could this be in response to the trial for the plot of land that SpaceX doesn't currently own being delayed to May? Wrapping up the Star Factory, concrete has been poured in some of the footings at the former location of Tent 3. It seems apparent that SpaceX would very much like to finish the Star Factory soon, as seen by the breakneck speed of construction. How long will it be until we see Star Factory reach its final form as rendered here by the space engineer? Let us know in the comments. Finally, let's take a quick look at the former Star Factory steel staging area. As well as previous homes, the old medical building has now been cleared. This is yet another area to keep an eye on, as we are unsure what it will be used for in the future. The old solar farm has been cleared, with the solar panels getting loaded into this truck for relocation, and a new building has been erected. The new medical centre can be seen here with patient transport vehicles parked nearby. In our last big ticket item for this week, we noticed that what used to be empty plots a few months ago have now been completely covered with the construction of employee housing. That's it for the build site. Before moving on to the launch site, do consider supporting us on Patreon to gain access to full quality flyover galleries and roundtable discussion the very day we fly. There's been steady progress at most areas here at the launch site, so let's get started with a labelled map by Procky. We'll take a quick look at last week's flyover on the 13th, and slide over to the most recent flyover on the 28th. Getting started at the newly renovated suborbital site entrance, we see concrete work has finally been completed after months of conduit installation and future site preparations. Over at the tank farm, the new arrangement for the tanks can be seen after the tank mentioned at Massey's was removed the morning of the 28th. Taking a look back at this photo from the 13th, we can see the tank removed was the one located here. Following the removal for transport, this tank was lifted and placed in its spot, which can be seen in our current photo. What was initially feared to be a sooner than expected teardown of the suborbital tank farm was instead just a donation of a redundant storage tank to the new Massey's setup. A teardown this soon wouldn't make much sense when we take a look over at Pad B, which has its brand new Fondag base in place, ready for the next ship static fire campaign in the coming weeks. If you recall the ending of our previous episode, the LR11000 crane was laid down following the work performed at the orbital tank farm in previous weeks. What was thought to be some basic maintenance turned out to be far more involved. Following the removal of the end jib, crews spent days attempting to remove the large pins that hold the lattice boom together. Likely seized due to corrosion from the surrounding environment and perhaps a lack of routine maintenance, crews threw every tool at the pins, including a hydraulic removal tool provided by Liebherr, torches, sledgehammers and even a metal arc gouging setup. Once removed, crews finished removing the rest of the boom and frame at the superstructure. After some much needed TLC, the crane finally started to go back together on the 29th, starting with the SA frame seen here. Shifting our focus over to the orbital tank farm, we see work continues to connect the new tanks to the rest of the farm, with cryopipe installation ongoing atop the stands erected along the wall. Along with several rows of insulated cryopipe, a few rows of likely gaseous commodity pipe runs can also be seen. In addition, a new trench has been dug from the existing cryotanker offload lot over toward the expansion lot. At the end of the trench, a newly delivered utility hut can be seen next to the 4 that were already in place. Behind the new tanks, the extension of the concrete blast protection wall has continued with 8 of the expected 9 tanks now in place. Looking over at the left side of the orbital tank farm by the GSE bunker and out towards the FTS storage container, a new blast protection wall is being installed. This area used to be protected by the dirt-filled HESCO barriers, but IFT 1 and 2 left them looking a little worse for wear to say the least. With those now removed, a concrete footer has been poured for placement of these blast protection walls to protect all critical assets from launches going forward. While difficult to see in the shadows, each wall section has long lengths of rebar extending from the base, which will be covered by a thick slab of concrete in the cutout seen behind the footer to provide ballast. Shifting around for a better view from the east, we see some new pipework has been installed on the lock subcoolers. To provide a new path for venting of the LN2 boil-off from the subcoolers, 4 manifolds were connected, with each manifold connecting 2 subcoolers, and pipework extended so the vapour would dump over the new blast wall. Seen from a different perspective in this ground photo from the 27th, we see each pipe mounted to a stand below and a screen in the end of each pipe to prevent wildlife from entering. It's not totally clear why SpaceX wanted to reroute the boil-off exhaust, but one possible explanation is protecting the workers in the event a return to the pad is needed during propellant loading operations to prevent the possibility of asphyxiation in a nitrogen-rich environment. Since our last flyover, crews have been busy adding I-beams vertically to the newly exposed GSE tanks. With the tanks previously in front of these now gone, this puts these 2 tanks in a line of fire for damage. With vertical supports and additional horizontal bands providing torsional stress relief for the beams, these test tanks will be much more prepared for the shockwave that will come for IFT-3. While the right-hand tank shell is filled with insulating perlite material and protected similarly to the other 4 cryotanks shells next to it, the shell protecting the water tank to the left is not and already sustained damage from IFT-2, despite having a tank in front of it at the time. In addition, the 4 tank shells next to these 2 are also protected by deflection of the blast plume by a leg of the OLM, making them less susceptible to damage. The supports added to these tanks are substantial and possibly an indication that these tanks could be sticking around for a bit longer than initially thought, almost certainly beyond IFT-3. Looking at the base of the previous 2 tanks, it appears the majority of the demolition and cleanup work is now complete, making way for whatever is to move into this location. Looking in front of the berm next to the OLM now, we see, you guessed it, more concrete work underway. This is close to the location of the cryopipe work that runs between the OLM to the base of the tower. This isn't clear if any work beyond basic removal and replacement is planned or has been performed. Over at the OLM, crews finally got their paint rollers out and painted the legs and shielding that was charred in the late December static fire. As for the BQD hood, well, let's just say it still needs some attention. Taking a closer look at the inside of the OLM, we see some painting has occurred, but it's also apparent some of the burn plates or shielding have been removed around the hold down clamps. Notice that the clamps are retracted in this photo. In the build-up to IFT-3, and while SpaceX works to remedy problems identified in the mishap investigation for IFT-2, SpaceX could be using this time to provide even more support to the structure to provide a faster turnaround time between launches 3 and 4. Robustness of this setup is key to a higher cadence of launches, but it's apparent the launch pad in its current configuration is not where they want it to be just yet. Luckily for us, it appears that we might have caught SpaceX in the midst of a clamp testing during our flyover, as this next image clearly shows the clamps are deployed. Speaking of robustness upgrades, how about these new steel plates that have been mounted to the tower base? After 2 launches and multiple static fires, it was apparent that spalling of the concrete base was an issue that needed to be remedied. The plates located on this side and the side facing the tank farm should put an end to the weathering of the concrete going forward. Wrapping up at the orbital site, we'll take a look at this ground photo showing the rear of the electrical bunker next to the lock subcoolers. After removing the old poly tank in recent weeks, a new metal one was brought in and put in its place. Black insulation was added all around and insulated pipework connected to the tank. This tank is likely for use with the HVAC system supplying cool air to the bunker. We'll end today's episode by taking a look at the new building being erected next to the water storage farm. After an unfortunate first attempt of pouring concrete walls that resulted in a blowout of the formwork, crews were forced to remove the forms and demolish the concrete as well as redo all of the rebar supports. It looks like this second attempt was a success according to this photo. Switching angles, we see some of the forms are still in place following the second pour, but the structure is taking shape at last. This is still expected to be a bathroom or a break room for workers at the launch site. On Tuesday the 30th of January, Aviation Week reported that the Department of Defense had approached SpaceX regarding taking over Starship for dangerous and sensitive missions. Colonel Eric Felt, Director of Space Architecture, claimed that there, quote, might be some use cases where there needs to be a government-owned, government-operated vehicle. Will SpaceX accept the request? And will this end with federally owned Starship vehicles? Let us know in the comments below. And that's it for episode 29 of Starbase Flyover Update. We hope you enjoyed your flight today with RGV Aerial Photography, and I hope we see you again soon. If you liked what you saw today, please subscribe for more episodes and content so you don't miss out on the new videos each week. I'm Jeff A. We'll see you next time from 10,500 feet.